Okay, we're a week into this channel. 11 subs and 400 views later, something's working, but something's missing. These videos were alright, but we need something more. I want to do an experiment, and what better movie to experiment with than the culmination of the biggest experiment in cinematic history. So buckle your seatbelts and prepare for something new. Here's how to enjoy. Quick rundown. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU, consists of 22 movies broken up into 3 phases, all culminating in Infinity War and Endgame. The films range from absolutely fantastic to we don't talk about that one. Say what you want about Marvel, but they've done something amazing here, and they show no signs of stopping. On to Endgame. We waited 11 years for this film, and it was worth it. Just the fact that I can say that sentence and mean it is insane. I remember when Guardians of the Galaxy came out and we all thought the MCU was done for. Yet here we are 5 years later, and the MCU is more successful than ever. Endgame isn't the second highest grossing film of all time for no reason. Before we can get into those reasons, now is your spoiler warning for both this movie and Infinity War. I can't talk about this movie without spoiling it, and if you're one of the people that still hasn't seen it, take this as your recommendation now. Go see it on the big screen while it's still there. Okay, here we go. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Endgame is a direct follow-up to last year's Infinity War and the culmination of the Infinity Saga. It follows the aftermath of the snap and how the Avengers deal with it. Let's talk about that original 6 first. Remember back in 2012 when this was the most badass thing ever? Robert Downey Jr. aces his role as Iron Man here. Endgame was his swan song and it was beautiful. It felt like we were saying goodbye from the get-go, and when we finally got there, everyone in my theatre was in tears. He really was Iron Man, and he will go down in history. Captain America was always my favourite Avenger, and our boy from Brooklyn finally getting his dance was the perfect send-off. Chris Evans did a fantastic job, being the only main Avenger to appear in the MCU every year since he joined, and always nailing his performances. I'm just as happy that Thor is sticking around as I am sad that we lost Cap and Iron Man. After Taika works his magic with Thor Ragnarok, I was far more on board with his character, and can't wait to see how he progresses in his role with the Guardians. Am I the only one that really enjoyed Hulk here? It was awesome watching him punch a Leviathan way back in 2012, but bringing in Professor Hulk was such a breath of fresh air, even if it was a little jarring at first. Mark Ruffalo did a great job here, and I'm excited to see where his character goes after Endgame. Hawkeye became awesome in this movie, as if he wasn't already. All of the scenes were awesome. The opening with him was beautifully dark, the Tokyo scene was something straight out of John Wick, and once he saw his family again, he really came into himself. His arc really culminated in this movie, and if we don't get any more Hawkeye, I'll be okay with that. That brings me to our last major Avenger, Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson was the best she's been in 11 years of the MCU here. Going from the broken leader to the ultimate sacrifice was insane. I'm glad we're going to see her again in some capacity in her solo movie, and I'm excited to see where that goes. The time travel plot was a fantastic way to take us on a grand tour of the last 11 years of the MCU. Seeing New York again was a great visual of just how far we've come. The scenes from Thor: The Dark World in New Jersey were wonderfully heartfelt, and going back to where the MCU first got crazy with Guardians of the Galaxy was a nice touch. I am critical of the time travel plot because it opens up a whole universe of worms. However, I want to see how the MCU deals with it or utilises time travel before I really judge it. I want to go back, however, and talk about the first act of the film. After seeing Hawkeye's family dusted, we're given a little levity with the MCU logo serenaded by Dear Mr. Fantasy. Yet, the story wastes no time getting into gear. We catch up with Tony and Nebula and see how they formed a bond floating through the vastness of space. Captain Marvel here is a little bit of a deus ex machina, but given a bit of thought, her appearance, while slightly ridiculous, isn't impossible. When we get back to Earth, reality really sets in. The Avengers are broken, and proceed to do a fairly unheroic thing. They fly to Thanos, destroy his home, and behead him before hearing him out fully. I'm not saying that Thanos was right, but the Avengers were not heroic here. Then we jump 5 years later. The film had already hit a stride here, and here's where we really got into gear. This is an MCU we've never seen before. The camera work, score, and production design here easily sell that the world is broken. Scarlett Johansson and Paul Rudd were particular highlights in Act 1. Once the solution to the Thanos problem is proposed,
Are you telling me that you built a time machine?
the story starts to lighten up a little more and get some more energy. Seeing that the snap worked for the better in some people was a really interesting angle and not something I thought I would see in this movie. It was really refreshing to see that Thanos' ideology did have some merit in some cases. It's at this point that we get more context to the New World. We see that Thor has lost it all, Hulk has bettered himself, and the Avengers are still working on helping out, despite being broken. My biggest problem with this movie was an extension of the time travel. The fact that Tony figured it out in one night of idle thought experiments was ridiculous. I understand that this movie is already 3 hours long and doesn't need to be any longer, but this is the one scene that I felt really needed something more. It's a tough problem to fix with Tony's mindset in the movie, but it's still a problem nonetheless. Back to the pros though. Act 2 is fantastic. Going on a time travel trip through the MCU is a treat. We really see how far our characters have come, and there are some great fan service moments such as Hail Hydra and I Can Do This All Day. The conversation between Tony and his father is one of the most heartfelt moments in the MCU. Seeing the Ancient One assisting with the Battle of New York was a nice extra detail, and having Thor be reminded that he still is worthy was a nice touch. Speaking of, can we just talk about the Ancient One's line about Doctor Strange in that scene? You mean to tell me that this motherfucker discovered that aliens existed and were invading his city and he was just like, dog, I gotta carry on my surgery 20 blocks away. Just think about that for a moment. Act 3 can be best summarised by this.
Oh, she's the one, Cole. Assemble.
The final battle of this film is the best final battle in cinematic history. Sorry, Helm's Deep. Everyone gets a moment here. The cinematography is gorgeous and the sweeping shots really aid the fantastic action on display here. You feel the determination of the characters more than ever before, and it really feels like the final stand. Seeing all of your favourite heroes working together here is wonderful, and I don't think we'll ever see anything of this magnitude again. It really is something special. Overall, this film is an event. The camera work, cinematography and production design are all at their peak here. There's such a wonderful diversity of locations across the MCU, and everyone in the cast is bringing their A-game, especially our main six. I don't have many problems with the film other than the ones I mentioned. Fat Thor was very jarring upon my first watch, but upon subsequent watches I liked it more and he made more sense. My main problems with the film were the Deus Ex Machinas, such as Captain Marvel coming in to save Tony, and Tony figuring out time travel. 2014 Thanos was also a little too ruthless, but it did make some sense. In his eyes, he'd already won, and they were still ungrateful, so he had to turn it up a notch. I understand that these are nitpicks, but no film is perfect, and some of the writing here was a little weak. I did have a problem with how the time travel will affect the MCU going forward, but I will withhold my opinion there until I see it in action. This is tied for my favourite MCU movie with Infinity War, and if you're a fan of the MCU in any capacity, you will enjoy this movie. Go and see it in your local theatre if it's still showing, or get everyone in for a movie night at home when it's finally released on home media. If you're not a fan of the MCU, go in for some awesome action scenes and a fresh take on a superhero film where the heroes have lost. Combine it with a viewing of Infinity War and you'll still be in for a treat, regardless of whether you're a fan of the MCU or not. Hey, I hope you enjoyed a slightly new style of video. If you did, please consider subscribing for more and commenting your thoughts. I really want to find a nice niche in the movie reviewing spectrum and hope that finding a way to enjoy each and every movie is the way to do that. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you'll join me for my next review on Godzilla, King of Monsters.